I'm really excited about this because we get to talk about different points of view around biblical topics without becoming enemies and hating the other person at the other end, which is really hard to do today. If you just watch a political debate, they walk away and there's nothing. So we want to set a different tone. We want to show that you can talk about different ideas, even if they're controversial, and hopefully get to some better understanding of the truth. And I'm just going to get out of here and let Robert come up and get us going.
Thank you. Hello. Me again. Okay, we're talking about holidays, holy days, same word, from the biblical perspective. And we have them in 5 categories here. The ones that God told us to do, the ones that God told us not to do, so I have them labeled as Satan's biblical holidays because they are in the Bible. They're an abomination to Jehovah, and he actually likes them. So there's a conflict between these and those. Then we have the ones that are practiced by Orthodox Jewish people today on the planet, Christian holidays and secular holidays. So everybody should fit in one category or another, at least if you live in the United States. Over here we have the 6,000 years of human history broken up into 1,000-year circles. The last millennium, the 1,000-year millennium, where we're expecting the Messiah to come back to rule. I put it in square. Also of note, these are the birthdays of these people to mark the beginning of these millenniums. And these are the years, 4,000 BC, 3,002. Also, what do we have here is I highlighted Israel as a nation. The kingdom of Israel comes to existence at about 1000 BC with King David. And it starts off really good. They were the light to the world. That's why we have the little menorah symbol here. And then they switched and went to Baal worship. And that's why we changed the logo here to a star. Because you're going to see, we're going to postulate this evening that this God that Satan always represents himself with is a sun god, a solar deity, and he always represents himself with a star, whether it's a 5-point star or a 6-point star or an 8-point star. He's a star kind of guy. The kingdom gets exiled in 586. The Babylonians take them out. They get exiled for 70 years. They get kicked out of the land. God brings them back in. They're not exactly repentant, and they continue their Baal and Ashtoreth worship all the way up until 70 AD, and then they get evicted once again. The prophet Jeremiah, we're going to be quoting today, is right around the time of the first exile. After they get kicked out in 70 AD, there's an exile of 1,878 years. So whatever these people did was way worse than these people, because these people only got exiled for 70 years and they got allowed back. These Israelis got exiled for 1,878 years. And you don't even want to talk about the bad things that have happened to them throughout these 1,878 years. The Antisemitism, the Inquisitions, the pogroms. Everywhere they went, there's always a prosper punishment. It's been a rough 1,800 years. Up until 1948, the nation gets reestablished once again out of thin air. It's almost like a miracle. In one day, the nation gets established. However, the nation today is still secular. They specifically put this symbol as the nation's symbol instead of like the menorah, which is a religious symbol, because they wanted a secular state. They didn't want a religious state. So the continuation of the philosophy, they have not turned back to the original theocracy that the nation was originally designed. However, the scriptures predict that will happen in the future. We call this line here, when Israel switches from being a secular state to being back to being a theocracy, where they go back to being the light bearers, shining light to the other nations and fulfilling their original destiny as the light bearers. They're supposed to have the king sitting on the throne, and it says here, and I will let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. This is God talking. So God is going to be living in this house. He calls it, "This is my house. I will dwell among my people." And he's going to establish a world government centered from this Temple Mount in Israel, in Jerusalem, and he's going to be dictating his law through all nations. So this is basically this kingdom right here. So what we're waiting for, or what we're arguing really, is who should lead this kingdom. This whole fight is about two different kings or two different messiahs or two different gods. And tonight we're going to look at those two differences through the realm of holy days. So let's start with the good ones. Okay, the biblical holidays that Jehovah told Israel to do. If you could pull up, that one. Notice the detail that God has for these holidays. He tells you exactly what he wants, when, how, to the finest detail. And he's got pretty much 8 primary feasts. The first one is Shabbat, Sabbath, which is every 7th day. And then there's the high holy days, which there's 7 of them. Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, which is in the spring. Feast of Weeks, which is kind of in the middle, it's 50 days after this. And then there's Trumpets, Atonement, and Tabernacles in the fall. And each one of these is given in excruciating detail of exactly how to worship, how to celebrate it. And feasts in Hebrew, the word is almost, I think it actually means an appointment. It's like a divine appointment. So he's programming us to think about something special is going to happen on these days, and they're prophetic. So if you lose this picture, you're going to lose some information that he's trying to communicate to you. Let's look at the bad holidays. Let's look at Satan's holidays, the ones that are prohibited by Jeremiah. He's actually telling people to do not do this. They are always centered on a female deity and a son that is the male deity, and he's usually associated with the god of the sun or the sun god. And there's different names for the same entity. Sometimes we call him, or we call her, the Queen of Heaven. Sometimes we call her Ashtaroth. Sometimes we call her Astarte. Sometimes we call it Inina Ishtar, the East Star. The Romans called her Diana Artemis. It's the same lady being worshipped over. The first time that this is actually mentioned is in Nimrod's time. So we're talking 3000 BC. This religion dates back to all the way right after the flood. The male version of this god, his name, we call him Baal, sometimes we call him Moloch, some call him Tammuz, Jupiter, Zeus, Apollo. Those are all names for the same being, just depends. This is Hebrew, this is Greek, this is Latin, but it's pretty much the same being. So get those in your mind. So let's look at these holidays in depth. Obviously, these are self-explanatory. The secular ones, everybody's used to. These are the more religious as far as the Christian people, and these are the Jews. Look at Passover. What was the idea with Passover? Well, let's start with the Sabbath. The Sabbath is basically, it's this picture right here. Every one of these holidays points you towards the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah. And the Sabbath is so important. Why? Because it's programming you to get into this 6 days you work, 1 day you rest. Remember the Queen Athaliah, she was exiling the good king for 6 years. And then on the 7th year, the good king got crowned. Joash got crowned and took the throne that he rightfully deserved. But in the meantime, we have 6 bad years, 1 good. 6 bad, 1 good. 6 where you're working, you're huffing, you're puffing. And over here, you're relaxing and things get a lot nicer. So that's really the picture that the Sabbath is giving you. And your body is not really programmed to work 7 days a week. You'll actually be more efficient if you work 6 days a week. Passover. What was Passover? Passover was when the Jews were stuck in Egypt. They could not come out of there on their own strength. They got so enslaved, they got so wrapped up with Egyptian slavery that if it wasn't God pulling them out, they could not come out on their own strength. And the feast of the Passover was that after God gave 10 chances to the Egyptian Pharaoh to let his people go, he kept saying no, 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 no. The final event was where the angel of death came, and wherever he saw the blood of the lamb on a doorpost, he skips that house. And wherever he didn't see the blood of the lamb, that house lost its firstborn son. So you have over here a substitutionary sacrifice that is an innocent lamb, without spot, without blemish, getting killed, not because of anything that it did, but however, its blood is going to save whoever believes it in faith and plants it on their doorpost. So we have the first picture of this. Then we have unleavened bread. Can you pull up the way we break down unleavened bread and first fruits? Unleavened bread was a 7-day feast that started with basically bread that doesn't have any yeast. And notice this bread. It's got holes in it. It's pierced. It's got stripes in it. So it has no sin, no yeast. It's got holes, and it's got stripes. And the calendar one that shows the days of how these days interact with each other. Yeah. So unleavened bread was a 7-day holiday that started from the 14th of Nisan, 7 days of unleavened bread, and it goes to this first week. Now, notice that the Passover is here. The sacrificial lamb gets slaughtered here, and after the sacrifice, after you accept the sacrifice, you're supposed to go sin-free. Okay, you don't. Over here, you're dirty, you're a sinner. You're a slave. Over here, the lamb gets sacrificed, and then after the sacrifice, it's unleavened time. Sin belongs to that era, not to anything after the sacrifice. Then we have first fruits. First fruits comes right before the first Sabbath. Where are we here? Where? Orange? Right here? First fruits comes right after the weekly Sabbath. Which is right here, 18, green. It's the, just pay attention to the colors. First fruits is the green one, so right after the weekly Sabbath, we have first fruits. Notice it's 3 days from the time of the sacrificial lamb. Notice 3 days and 3 nights. So the lamb gets killed Wednesday night. Thursday night is 1 day, 1 night. Friday night is 1 day, 1, and this 2 days, 2 nights. Saturday is 3 days, 3 nights. So this lamb, if Yeshua is the resurrected lamb, he gets killed Wednesday night. He resurrects Saturday night and fulfills being in the grave those 3 days and 3 nights. And when he comes out, during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, it's still going on, but he comes out on this holiday of first fruits. And we say that this points to the Messiah because he gets the first resurrected body on that day. And that's kind of like the body that we're all waiting for. But the harvest for us is in the future. This is like a down payment. It was to give us an idea of what's going to happen when you follow me, you accept my sacrifice, and I'll give you the same body that I'm getting. But he just gets the first one. So that's first fruits. Then there's Feast of Weeks. It's 49 days after this. The Jews celebrate the Feast of Weeks because that's the day that they got the Torah from Mount Sinai. And if you remember, that's the day that there was a rebellion with Moses, and they were starting to argue over who should run the camp between Korah and Moses. And it got to the point where God says, okay, Moses, draw a line. Everybody that stays on that side of the line, earthquake, earth got swallowed up, and 3,000 Jews lost their lives that day because of that rebellion. The other thing that happens on Feast of Weeks, which is in the New Testament, is what we call Pentecost. It's the day that the Holy Spirit comes into that room in Jerusalem, and it says that 3,000 people were added to the church. Now notice the contrast. 3,000 people got killed, negative 3,000 because of the law, and the Holy Spirit, you get a positive 3,000. It's not a coincidence that those numbers are the same. So that's the day that we get a new law, we get a new spirit, and that's the second time that all the Jews had to go to Jerusalem. You had to go during the spring, you had to go during Feast of Weeks, and then you had to go a third time for these fall holidays. And the fall holidays is Trumpets, Atonement, Tabernacles. Trumpets is basically the loudest shofar. You guys know what a shofar sounds like? Now imagine that, the loudest thing that you could possibly hear, where everyone on earth hears it. That's the Feast of Trumpets. Remember in Jericho, read Jericho like a prophetic book, not a history book. They ran around the city 6 days and they blew the trumpets, the walls came tumbling down, and the city gets conquered by the right people. Notice, for 6 days we're going in circles, but on the seventh day the trumpet's going to sound, and the triumphant king is going to come over and take this kingdom back. So that's trumpets. Atonement, the Day of Atonement. The Jews, this is a day that's kind of bittersweet. They cry, they laugh, they fast. The emotions are kind of all mixed up. So the closest thing I was able to get from talking to some Orthodox Jewish people is like, so the feeling, would it be kind of like the feeling that you get when a rebellious son has left and he's been rebelling against his loving father, and then one day he figures out that he was wrong, and he comes back home and gives his dad a big hug. Because both of them at that point, they're going to be happy, but they're going to be sad. They're going to be smiling, they're going to be crying. He goes, is that the emotion that you guys experience during Yom Kippur, during the Day of Atonement? He goes, yeah, it's kind of like that. So we perceive that this is a reflection of the Day at Atonement, at one mint. This is the day that Israel, remember the day that Israel switches from going from worshiping a secular state to worshiping the God of light. This is the day that Israel turns. And I think that they're getting ready for that day. They've been getting ready for that day. And God has said, this is the day that it's actually going to happen. And then there's Feast of Tabernacles. After the nation repents, after the Messiah sits on the throne, then the kingdom gets established, and we're going to have a new ruler of the entire planet. I call him 777 because he's right after 666. And this new ruler is going to implement Israeli Jewish laws on the whole world. Every nation is going to be a subset of that nation. The nations will still exist, languages will still exist, and this Jewish king is just going to be running the place, centered from his government of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, we look at these as all leading to a messianic idea. Why? We look at the Messiah as a guy who's looking to get married. The Messiah, he's been rejected by humanity, and he can't understand why, because he's been a nice guy. He's been a loving Messiah, and humanity keeps rejecting him, and it's kind of sad. Imagine a rich, beautiful man that is looking for his bride. And when he comes to town, he's looking for a girl that will really love him for who he is. So what's the first thing this guy's going to do? He's going to dress himself down. He's going to dress like a pauper. He's not going to show up with his big, long dress. Why? He pulls up in a Ferrari. What kind of girls is he going to attract? He's going to attract all the wrong ones. So he's going to scale himself down. He's not going to go around flinging the $100 bills. He's going to get a job at McDonald's, like Eddie Murphy did in Coming to America. Okay, that is a messianic movie. It's perfect. Okay, the guy scaled down. He removed every aspect of his kingdom, of his divinity, shall we say? Why? Because he was looking for a girl that would love him for who he was. Cinderella, same thing. Look at even the movie Titanic, if you think about it. Who's the hero? The good-looking guy, and he shows up, he's all poor, and then what does he do? To prove the love for the girl, what does the guy always have to do to prove his love? What's the number one way that you could prove to the girl that you really, really, really love her? What did Leonardo DiCaprio do? He dies. At that point, nobody can question that this guy really loved, what was her name, Rose? So, what happens when a powerful king who's rich needs to get a woman to fall in love with him, not because of his money, not because of his looks, but because of who he is, he has to temporarily step down from that position of glory, from that position of authority. And that's what we see in these feasts. We see in the Passover, in the unleavened bread, and the first fruits, we see a sacrificial lamb getting sacrificed, stripping himself down, riding on a donkey. This guy's riding on a white horse. This guy's riding a donkey. We have actually, the Jewish people came up with two concepts of two messiahs because they can't reconcile this guy who's getting beat and punished with the guy who's getting crowned a king. So they come up and they called two of them. They said, this is Messiah ben David, and this is Messiah ben Joseph. Messiah ben David is the king. Messiah ben Joseph is the suffering servant. My point to you is that could it be that it's the same being and he shows up in two different times? Why? Because a loving relationship has to be based on free will. And if he came with full power and full glory and full authority, he was going to attract the wrong kind of people. He's inviting us into this kingdom. This kingdom is an invitation for people who love God and love his laws. Not because you get paid, not because it's beneficial to you, but strictly because your character loves God's character and you love his laws so much that you want to live in this kingdom at all costs. I don't care if I'm the janitor in that kingdom. I'd rather be the janitor in that kingdom than the lion and the king in Satan's kingdom. So that's what he's looking for, and we're postulating this evening that that Yeshua comes in 33 AD, and he offers us the kingdom on that day. He strips himself down of all glory, and what do we do when he offers his kingdom to us? What do we say? Can you put the picture of Pontius Pilate? The mankind says, you know what, we don't like this guy. I don't like his character. We actually want the other Yeshua. There's two Yeshuas that show up. There's Yeshua Barabbas, and there's Yeshua, son of Joseph. Now, interesting name. So they're both called Yeshua. But notice that Barabbas in Hebrew means son of the Father. Notice the title that this guy was claiming. He was claiming to be the son of the Father. This other Yeshua, who we chose instead, this guy here, had the exact same name and the exact same title. Now, isn't that interesting? We have two Yeshuas, and who do we pick? We picked the wrong one. What do we tell the right guy? We tell him, we don't need you, don't want you. We put him on a cross and told him to go back from wherever you came from. So then what happens? We have two more millenniums under the governorship of, basically, this is the choice between Jesus Barabbas or Jesus called the Messiah. But notice, son of the Father, in essence, this guy was claiming the title, directly or indirectly. And tonight we're going to postulate that was actually another one of Satan's possessive men. That's why we put here 111. We're saying that Yeshua Barabbas was actually one of the first Antichrist, one of many that are going to postulate, that are going to position themselves to be the governor of the world instead of this Yeshua. Hitler, for example, we showed you his ID card last time that his number was 555. The next one is 666. The real one that we're all waiting for is 777. Okay. So we have these feasts broken up into spring, summer, fall. Let's look at the ones that Satan came up with and the ones that are an abomination to God. The ones that are an abomination that Jeremiah, can you read Jeremiah, what he says about us hanging around with this queen of heaven and cooking cakes?
Yes. Jeremiah 44, starting in verse 15. Then all the men which knew that their wives had burned incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by, a great multitude, even all the people that dwelt in the land of Egypt and Pathros, answered Jeremiah, saying, As for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Lord, we will not hearken unto thee. But we will certainly do whatsoever thing goeth forth out of our own mouth, to burn incense unto the Queen of heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our kings, our princes, in the cities of Judah. and in the streets of Jerusalem, for then had we plenty of victuals.
Okay, so Jeremiah is saying, will you guys knock this off? This is an abomination. But they're saying, no, we are not going to knock it off. We're going to continue doing this just like we did with our ancestors. And remember, this is Jeremiah, so he's talking about here when Israel is no longer bearing the flag of Jehovah. They're actually bearing the flag of Baal right now. The whole nation has adopted an Ashtoreth, a queen of heaven, and a Baal mentality. And we are drowning in traditions like making cakes to the Queen of Heaven. That's a picture from my cousins in Italy, actually. And we are baking cakes to the Queen of Heaven. This is exactly, this is 2019, but notice from a prophet that was writing of almost 3,000 years ago, these traditions are alive and well in secular society and in religious society. Okay, that's the Queen of Heaven, Ashtaroth, Astarte, the female goddess fertility. Let's look at these. Let's look at these a little deeper here. Can you pull up a Wikipedia of Queen of Heaven? What gets us going with all this pagan nonsense? Now, the first thing that's interesting here on the Queen of Heaven of Wikipedia is look at there's already a confusion. It says Queen of Heaven, Antiquity, and then there's another one. For the Virgin Mary, see Queen of Heaven. Now, the distinction is this one's a capital H, and this one's a small h. That's the distinction. That's it. Other than that, this is talking about the pagan female deity that Jeremiah was telling Israel to not worship. And today, you want to click on Queen of Heaven? Let's look at the other one. Look at that. The exact same title, the exact same name is given to supposedly Mary, who's Jesus' mom. Okay, go back to the other one. Because I'm going to postulate that this is actually one and the same. There is no difference. We're worshiping the same God with the same attitude, doing the exact same things that Israel was told not to do. And we haven't changed at all. The only thing that we've changed is the year, but really nothing else. So, Queen of Heaven, given a number of sky goddesses. Notice it's a goddess of the sky. She's got many names: Inanna, Anat, Isis, Ishtar, Astarte, Asherah. All of these names are for the same deity. Notice you get the mother with the son. And this comes from an ancient tradition from Nimrod. Remember Nimrod, the guy who put the first world kingdom together after the flood? He was married to a wicked lady named Semiramis. And what happened is, I don't know if Jewish tradition is true or not, but they said that Shem kills Nimrod and leaves this Semiramis wicked lady or widowed. Now, this lady had she didn't have a chaste lifestyle. She was a promiscuous, kind of having sex with everybody kind of gal. And she finds herself pregnant. Her husband is dead. So she starts to say that it was a virgin birth. She starts the first idea of I am impregnated by the gods. Because Nimrod, by the way, started claiming himself to be divine after a while. But now Semiramis is claiming divinity. Female divinity, pregnant, impregnated. And guess what? Her son comes out. His name is Tammuz. And now the story gets even weirder. This guy becomes a hunter of pigs, boars. And after he grows up, they get married. They actually start a incestuous relationship now where you have mother deity and the son deity. Mother, son, pagan deity. And this son here, Tammuz, is another name for Baal, Moloch, Tammuz. All of these are indicative of that offspring off of this unholy union between mother and son. Okay, let's see what else we can learn about this Queen of Heaven, because she's real popular. Goddess of the moon, Sumerian god of the moon. This is the god of the sun. She is the god of the moon. And notice that we We devoted our entire calendar to it. The first day of the week, we worship the sun god. The second day of the week, we worship the moon god. We keep going. Tuesday, Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, it's the god of Mars. Mercury, Wednesday, Mercoledì. The Thursday, Thor. You have a picture of Thor. Let's read what the god of Thor looks like. God of thunder. He's the son of a deity, so he's a son. He's the god of thunder, and he's the guy who throws lightning bolts. Okay, so he's violent. He fits this description perfectly. God of war. Venus, fire day. That's how we get Friday. And of course, the last one is Saturn day, which brings us to this holiday here called Saturnalia. Can you pull up Saturnalia? Wikipedia on Saturnalia. This is a Roman festival. This is before the New Testament was ever even written. A continuation of holidays after these deities. Can you pull it up, Katie, or do you want me to read it off of mine?
Picture of Thor?
Huh?
You want Thor?
No, I'm going to do the Wikipedia on Saturnalia. Oh, there's Thor. Notice he's the son of a chief of gods, and whose mother is the goddess of fertility. So, different names for the same beings. I'm going to show you. Now, can you pull up the Wikipedia on Saturnalia? Let's get more detail on what these people used to do, what these ancient people used to do while they're worshiping this female deity and this sun deity. Saturnalia? That's the... Well, let's finish Queen of Heaven before we go to Saturnalia. Let's scroll up over here. Look at these pictures, linking it to Mary. Notice this one. This is Saturnalia. This is the queen, female deity who's putting her hand or her feet over a lion. I don't know if that's the lion of the tribe of Judah, but to me that I took that as an insult, because the true king identifies himself as the lion out of the tribe of Judah, and this female deity now is claiming to have authority over this lion. But look at this. Queen of Heaven, later worshipped as Ishtar, the east star. Keep going up. In Jeremiah, she's called Astarte, Ashtaroth. Fertility, sexuality, and war. Okay? Her symbol was the star. Fertility, sexuality, and war. Now think about that. Keep that in mind. Fertility, sexuality, and war. Does society today have a problem with fertility, sexuality, and war? And could it be that we have these problems because we're still doing things, we're still burning incense to the Queen of Heaven, we're pouring out our drink offerings as we have done, as our fathers have done, and we haven't learned from the mistakes of the past, we're doing it again. Look at this. See that would do in the cities of Judah and the streets of Jerusalem. The children gather wood and fire, kindle the fire. By the way, I think this is what it means to prohibit the Israelis to kindle a fire. This had nothing to do with pushing an elevator button on a Saturday. They were kindling fire and gathering wood to make honor and to pay homage to this Queen of Heaven. It was that was provoking God to anger. That's what says that ye may provoke me to anger. You understand, in the later verses, it uses the word wrath. It's not like it just upsets him. It is provoking him to wrath. It is It's the angriest words that you can use in English to explain to you how God is feeling when you confuse his instructions with Satan's instructions. When you confuse a female goddess or a male sun god with him, it is the biggest insult in the planet that you can do for him. Okay, so let's go to Saturnalia. Queen of Heaven, according... Which one? Astarte?
You see, towards the end, the third line to the end of that paragraph, see it's that, where it says Asherah. What? Right there. Asherah was worshipped.
Asherah was worshipped in ancient Israel as the consort of El, and in Judah as the consort of Yahweh and the Queen of Heaven. Now, notice, remember when Satan says, I want to be like God? He wants to be like God. If he can elevate himself and the female form and be this guy's husband, he's fulfilling his desires to equate himself with the Most High. And of course, who's refusing this marriage? You think God is okay with sharing his throne like a husband shares his house with a wife? You think God is okay with sharing his throne with this fallen angel? Absolutely not. This is an abomination to Jehovah. He's not going to mix himself with a being who is in a state of rebellion. And that's what this is. This is a reflection of a being in the state of rebellion, and sometimes he pops up as a female, sometimes he pops up as a male. Both counts disqualify him from having anything to do with this guy. Okay, let's Assembly, Yahweh. Let's go to Saturnalia. Let's see what these people actually used to do in these holidays. What was their tradition? I have them written down here. Hopefully we could pull them up. They used to have, over here there was sex, drugs, and rock and roll, basically. The party of Saturnalia was in the winter. Can you give me Wikipedia Saturnalia? They used to overeat, gluttony, sexual fornication, ancient god of Saturn, right around the December 25th, because these holidays were all solar based. This was during the spring equinox. This was during the winter solstice, when the sun was the farthest away from the earth, and it was kind of like the sun was reborn, and days started getting longer after that point. So that's when it became popular to do this. But look at what we used to do during this gag gifts. So we have gift giving. We called it the best of days, private gift giving, continual parting, public banquet, carnival atmosphere, overturning social norms. Gambling was permitted. Masters provided table service for their slaves. That's role reversal. You understand? That means that they cross-dressed, and all of a sudden the master started, he dressed like the slave, and the slave took the master's costume. Men dressed like women, men dressed like men. There's a whole lot of cross-dressing, and today it's called transvestite, in essence. So society is being spun upside down, and all social norms are being broken. That's what's going on during this feast of Saturnalia. Now, let's see Baal and then Moloch. Can you pull up the Wikipedia of Baal? That was sun salutation. You know, in yoga, we say we don't worship the sun today, but really? Okay, this is the god of Baal. This is what they used to worship under this name here. And notice this one was made out of gold. Today, we can't afford it out of gold, so we got a bronze one. But the idea of worshiping money and power and strength and authority, not much has changed. We just changed the dresses and we changed the metal. Notice the sun with the snake. Okay, well, let me see Moloch. Look at this guy. This guy we used to sacrifice our kids to. Because think about it. You're having a sex festival early spring. Okay, 9 months later, a lot of women are going to be pregnant with unwanted babies. What are you going to do with these babies that come out and they're born late winter? You got to get rid of them. So what do? You bring them to the god of Moloch and you sacrifice it. And this made God so upset, and he wrote it over and over and over. Do not give my seed unto Moloch. Do not give my seed unto Moloch. You are committing whoredoms. Do not do this. Knock this off. Now you say, well, gee, we don't do that today. We don't have a burning statue where we throw our kids in. Like, no, we don't do that at 40 weeks. We do it at 36 weeks, at 32 weeks, at 28 weeks, at 24 weeks, at 20 weeks. We have abortion clinics throughout the... Oh, here's a map. Somebody look up how many abortions we do worldwide today. I think it's in the millions, multi-millions. I think it's like 40, 50 million abortions happening worldwide. Go back to the Moloch picture. We are giving Moloch anybody? How many worldwide abortions? 45 million babies. We're giving this guy 45 million babies, and we can't even wait till they're born. We got to give them to him a lot sooner. But besides the differential in age, this religion is alive and well on the planet today. So, we're adopting pagan fertility and sex festivals with our cross-dressing, our role reversal. By the way, role reversal is another way of introducing the idea that we're all the same. Your socialism teacher at school, notice he just cannot stand the fact that somebody has more money than somebody else. He wants everybody the same. We have to homogenize everything and everybody. So, this is ancient biblical history, 2,000-3,000 years ago. However, today, we've graduated, and as we've seen already, a couple of these things we're still doing. Look at this. Do we have a winter festival that people like to enjoy overeating and fornicating and gift-giving and gambling? I mean, I put Christmas here as a secular holiday. This has got absolutely nothing to do with religion. Okay, even Easter, there's a secular version of Easter. You got the fertility rites with the Easter bunny and the Easter eggs. The people celebrate these holidays. And by the way, you notice the Easter ham and the Christmas ham. You got to tie back into the pig that Tammuz was a hunter of. Without pig, all these holidays for some reason dry up. It's the official meal of the day. But the point is that traditions of 2,000-3,000 years ago, even though people have never read the Bible, they don't believe that Satan exists, they don't believe that Jehovah's exist, they think that everybody is just doing their own thing. Notice how these mirror these and how these mirror those. Look at our fascinations with birthday. Go back, put the yoga picture back up. So we don't worship the sun. Really? You ever go to a yoga studio? That's what they do, and it's called the salutation of the sun. They bow down to it in 18 different ways. I can't even think of how many. Exhale, inhale, right foot forward. I mean, we've made worshiping the sun an exercise. This is fascinating. Look at birthdays, okay? Read the Satanic Bible. This is a quote from the Satanic Bible about birthdays, our fascination with birthdays.
The highest of all holidays in the Satanic religion is the date of one's own birth. This is in direct contradiction to the holy of holy days of other religions, which deify a particular god who has been created in an anthropomorphic form of their own image.
Okay, what he said is that the best day, the best and the highest holiday for us should be our own birthday. Because according to Satanic religion, the most important person in the universe is yourself. So if the most important person in the universe is me, the most important day of the year should be my birthday. It's rational. It makes sense. But notice the other part. It was an abomination to him. What he said, it was an abomination that these holidays are aimed at a God who was anthropomorphic. What that means is that a God who made himself in the form of physical flesh. That part is abhorrent. what did he say? It's abhorrent.
Okay,
It's an abomination.
back in Jeremiah?
No, I think they use the same words. For Satan, these holidays are an abomination. Anthropomorphic, which is an abomination to Satan. And what's funny is that Jehovah used the same word, an abomination, when he was talking about what we're doing with all this nonsense. Okay? So this is an abomination to Jehovah. That's an abomination to Satan. Interesting how these guys look at the exact same thing but coming up with different conclusions. Okay, there's other secular holidays, 4th of July, Labor Day, Halloween, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving. They're not directly related, but notice that they're all of them either related to war. They're all either related to socialism, like Labor Day. Halloween, cross-dressing. Memorial Day, I think that's got something to do with war. Thanksgiving, a feast of a harvest. Let's do a Wikipedia search on Carnival. Carnival is something that is celebrated worldwide. In America, it's kind of downplayed a little bit, but to the rest of the world, it's an important secular holiday, and it's played in every single nation around. Can you do a wiki on Carnival? This is a spring feast where you go in the street and let's do images. No, not, yeah. Okay, let's see. Carnival is a Western Christian festive season that occurs before the liturgical season of Lent. We'll talk about Lent in a minute. Entertainment, street parties, public street parties, a circus, elaborate costumes, masks allow people to set aside their everyday individuality and experience a heightened sense of social unity. They consume excessive amounts of alcohol, meat, and other foods that will be foregone during the upcoming Lent. So we pig out, and we're getting ready for a fast of a 30, 40-day fast that's coming up. And let's look at them. This is Rome in 1650, but this is Rio, like probably this year. Look at all the nations that do this. Scroll, you're going to see a whole bunch of these. Look at these. These are the nations that do this. Okay. Canada, Caribbean, Colombia. Look at Nicaragua. Click on the one in France. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, pick any of them. Let's see Italy. Let's stick with the Italians. Yeah, see? This is what it looks like. That's Carnevale in Venice. You hide your true self. Let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, we didn't get to 8. Look at Hungary. A bunch of weirdos dressed up like a bunch of weirdos going up and down and having a parade. And notice that it's not religious. We have some religious connotations with Lent and Easter, but this particular thing is done by mostly secular people. Hungary, Italy, Lithuania. Look at that. Do you see the pattern? Valletta on Malta. I don't even know where that is. Now, cross-dressing. Today would be we'd call it a gay pride parade, where everything is getting mixed up culturally. Sexes are intertwined, and alcohol is flowing, and it's a party. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Okay, that's Carnival. Secular Easter, I mean, the Easter bunny and the eggs. You do your Easter egg hunts. Now, which one of these is the biggest one? What do you get more time off from school? When I went to school, you got 1 week for Easter, and you got 2 weeks for Christmas. There's a dominance on the winter fests. This is really where if you have to put them up against each other, this one wins out, okay? The male son wins out. 2 weeks of vacation over there. Okay, let's move over to the supposedly Christian holidays. We talked about Lent, where there's 40 days where you're fasting. You're trying to mimic this idea that maybe Jesus went around without eating for 40 days, so you're trying to mimic that. And we worship supposedly the resurrection of the Son of God. And we do it on a Sunday. And we're told that he died on Friday and he resurrected Sunday morning. Now, of course, if you do the math, you don't get 3 days and 3 nights from Friday to Sunday. You don't even get 2 days and 2 nights. But it's close enough for government work. We're trying to shove New Testament biblical ideas into a pagan mindset. It does not fit, so you're going to have to force it. You're going to have to shove it in there. And, of course, what do we get? We get the resurrection of the sun on, we call it Easter sunrise celebration. Now, isn't that interesting? You go to church on Sunday, and we have an Easter sunrise celebration. Now, are we worshiping the sun, or are we worshiping the resurrected sun? I postulate to you that it doesn't really matter, because even if you are worshiping the resurrected son, it's not the son of that being that you're worshiping. It's the son of that being called Baal, called Moloch. Moloch, by the way, means king. Notice how these titles are intermeshed. Satan calls this guy a king. Baal means the God, God king. These titles are intertwined to the point that even Jesus ends up competing with a guy whose name was Jesus. There's 2 Jesuses. My point is there's 2 Jesuses, there's 2 Messiahs, there's 2 gods, capital G, small g, but they're both vying for the same thing. So, when we say the resurrection is a picture of the Son of God, you got to ask yourself, which Son? Is it that one or is it that one? Same thing with Christmas. Christmas is the birthday of the Son of God. Okay. Ask anybody, do we know when Jesus was born? No. Does the Bible ever say? No. Notice the detail that we had at the beginning of all the holidays that God specifically told us to do. He told us when, how many little pieces of salt to put on the plate. But the most important holiday in Christendom, the birthday of Jesus, for some reason we have to guess on his birthday. So we have to pick a date. And handily, which date do we pick? Well, you don't want to do it in June. Why not do it when all these other people are already lined up to worship Baal and Moloch and Tammuz and Jupiter, and we have a resurrected son on December 25th, and if you're trying to merge world religions with New Testament theology, you get a whole lot of newcomers coming into your party. You get a lot of people coming to the party if you call this December 25th. And that's what we did. To increase the scope of the church, we changed this holiday, and we just started calling it Jesus' birthday, Son of God. Okay, let's pull up the Wikipedia of Epiphany. Epiphany is something that is also very popular in the rest of the world, and here in America it's not. It's a January 6th. Yeah, that one. Okay. Is a Christian feast day that celebrates the revelation of God incarnate as Jesus Christ. It's on January 6th. Yeah, right there, January 6th. And this is kind of done on Eastern Orthodox. It's more like a Russia kind of thing. But even in Italy, I think, do you do anything on La Befana? It's called in Italian. You exchange gifts. And what do you do on December 25th?
Depending on the area, sometimes this is the main one.
Okay.
Like where we're from, that's what you usually do with that.
So interesting that the main peak of this season, sometimes it lands before New Year's, as in December 25th, and sometimes it lands after New Year's on January 6th. But fundamentally, it's the same holiday. But there's this confusion between New Year's, and then we have 5 some days before and 5 some days after. We get to January 6th, December 25th. We'll talk about that more later on. Okay, also, the weekly day of worship has been changed from Saturday, and we change it to Sunday. Why? Well, this whole religion is based on the sun. We're worshiping the sun. We're worshiping the sun god, this male deity sun god. So doesn't it make perfect sense that the most important day of worship should be shifted from the 7th day to what God had said? We need to shift it to the first day, which is our Sunday. And if you don't get enough worshiping done on that day, you go to Moon Day. Okay, Let's look at, did we finish all the supposed Christian holidays? Oh, let's read what Jeremiah talks about. Let's look at, Jeremiah has a thing about the Queen of Heaven, but he's also got a thing about this Christmas game. Read Jeremiah chapter 10 and see if this applies to modern day Christmas.
In verse 2, thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them, for the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with an axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not.
Okay, so he's saying, do not do what the heathen do. And what these heathen do is they're crazy. They go in the middle of nowhere, they cut down an evergreen tree, they lug it on their shoulders, they bring it in their house, they stick it on a stand because the thing can't stand itself up, and then they deck it with gold and silver, especially the one that wraps all the way like a snake around this tree. Now, look at the image of the Christmas tree. It's an interesting image. You got the triangle. You chop it off at the top in order to put the star, right? So over here, you put your star on the top of the tree. The star on the top of the tree. You put the star. Yeah, you put the star. The 8-pointed star. Remember what we read about the Queen of Heaven? Now, sometimes it's a 5-pointed star, like in the cover of the Satanic Bible. Sometimes we even got Hanukkah going. We can get the Jews roped into this, and we put a 6-pointed star on it. See if you get a tree, a Hanukkah tree. Can we get a... It's called Hanukkah, yeah, CH. It's a merger of... yeah, right there. Come on. Now, tree, yeah, tree. Yeah, there you go. See? Oh, and we make it blue. We make it Israeli blue. Now, notice the snake wrapped around this tree. Now, I've been postulating to you guys that these are miniature towers of Babel that were God did not allow them to finish, and what Satan has been doing, he's been putting these little towers of Babel in our homes every year, and he's waiting for him to set his final authority in his final kingdom, what we call 666, and basically take control of the planet, something that he hasn't been able to do yet. But this could also be the tree of the knowledge of that was in the garden that Satan was wrapped around. Those are the fruits, and we were told not to eat from it, and he said, go ahead, eat from it. It's interesting imagery. I don't know if we're making stuff up here, but the bottom line is you have an evergreen tree, a tradition that dates back to way before Jesus was even born, before even Mary and Joseph even existed, and everything associated with it is based on selfishness. You get gifts, not because you deserve it, not because you did anything. You're just kind of entitled to stuff. I remember going up to my mom, what do I get? And when do I get it? And why don't I have more? That was what I did on Christmas morning. Okay, so Lent, cakes, Friday, Jeremiah. Okay, let's look at the Jewish holidays, because you think, okay, all this paganism has been pressuring itself into the church, right? We're being pressured. These ideas are being shoved into our ideology. Surely it didn't make it to the Jews. Surely there's no way that they would have gotten it, right? Well, let's look at the holidays that they've added. If you look at the modern menorah, it's no longer, put the modern menorah. This is the ancient menorah. It's got 7 sticks. This is the one that God designed. And if you notice, it's this. See, these 7 feasts? And then you do it like this. This is an ancient biblically designed menorah. This is a work of art that's actually specified in the scriptures of how it looks. But this is the new one that we're using today. And we added this because of Hanukkah, the 8 candles and so supposedly. My point is that this image has now been added. 2 holidays have been added to it, Purim and Hanukkah. Let's do a Wikipedia search on Purim. Is Purim in the scriptures? Huh? No. Let's look at this. No. Okay, you're bringing up a point. If you're trying to shove a holiday into a place where a holiday is not there, because remember, these are the holidays that God told you to do. He didn't tell you to do Purim, and he didn't tell you to do a Hanukkah. But let's say that you wanted to shove a Purim. Let's say that you're a little upset that all these other people are getting to do Carnival and Easter and dressing up really funny. Put some see the pictures of what they do on Purim? Do a Purim, check the images. What they do on Purim is basically a carnival. You get it? There you go. That's Purim. These guys, they do an adloyada. Do you know what adloyada is? Adloyada, they say on Purim, you're supposed to get so drunk that you cannot tell the difference between what Haman did and what Mordecai did. You understand? They're promoting you. It's actually a commandment to get so drunk where you cannot tell the difference between good and evil. Now, does that sound like a holiday that God implemented? No. And if you go back to the Purim one, you'll see that this is a rabbinic tradition. It was added later, usually dating back to the 4th century BC. 4th century BC. 4th century BC, right here. Notice, it was from the entire time where we're doing Baal worship and Ashtaroth worship, that's where this thing gets added to the soup. Does it say added by the rabbis? Scroll up. Religion, text, category, portal. Where?
Above Jews and Judaism.
There you go. Related to Hanukkah as a rabbinically decreed Jewish holiday. And by the way, Hanukkah says exactly the same thing. It's not ordained by the scriptures, the Tanakh, the Torah. It is a rabbinically decreed Jewish holiday way late into the season. And it just so happens to land right around the time that we do our pagan Easter and our pagan carnival. And it just so happens to be that you wear the mask and you do the same thing at the same time, for the same people at the same time, and you get drunk to the point where you no longer know the difference in good and evil. But how are we going to sell this to the average person? You got to find something that happened during that time and label that as the reason for the holiday. So what they do? Oh, that's when Esther and Mordecai did their savings of the Jews in Persia, and therefore that's what we're really doing. Does that remind you of when we made the golden cow? Go back to the golden cow. Does that remind you of when we made the golden cow and said, "This is the God that took us out of the land of Egypt"? How handy. See, we didn't say, by the way, this is a pagan god of Lucifer, and he wants us to make a cow, and that way we get ourselves away from the true God. What they said about that golden cow is that this is the God that took us out of the land of Egypt. This is Jehovah. What they were making is a satanic image and labeling it with something true. You understand? That's what Purim is. Purim is a satanic idea, and if you can trace it throughout history. I'm trying to use red for my female goddess. I'm trying to use green for my male. But if you can see that these distinctions have been carried over throughout history, the church bought into it hook, line, and sinker on both the green and the red. And the Jews held up a little bit better. They only got one. Coming into to this with Purim. And then, of course, they needed their version of Christmas. So what are we going to do? How are we going to get the Jews celebrating Christmas? That's a little tough. Because the only thing that happened on December 25th for the Jews is that this temple here got desecrated by Antiochus Epiphanes on December 25th. They took a pig, sprinkled the blood all over the place, and then the Maccabees had to fight violently for like, I don't know, 2-3 years. And they had to go back and restore and reclaim this temple for Jewish sacrifices. So the desecration, the abomination of that temple happened on December 25th. It's getting kind of hard now to sell them a holiday right around the same time that one of the most horrible things happens to them. So what do we tell them? It says, we'll do the lights, we'll do the stars, we'll do the tree, we'll do everything that the pagans used to do. But we'll call it the Feast of Lights, and we'll call it the dedication of the new temple. Yeah, I think we can sell that. That would work. That will work. Another thing that is interesting about December 25th is that in the Jewish calendar, it's Kislev 25, which means that it doesn't always line up with Christmas. But every once in a while, it does. Which makes this the new holiday that is celebrated all around the world. You go to Dubai, you go to Africa, China. This holiday is an international holiday where everybody is partaking. It is the unification holiday. So let's label that with, no, excuse me, this was supposed to be red. These are the female deity, and this is the wannabe Christmas, the Jewish version of wannabe Christmas. The pagan influence came in. It didn't come in as strong as the church. The church bought it all, hook, line, and sinker. We didn't push anything back. Most people in the church, if you ask them about God's holidays, if you ask them about tabernacles, atonement, or trumpets, nobody even knows when these are. Nobody even knows what they are. Okay? Everybody knows their birthday. Everybody knows that Christmas is December 25th. I mean, everybody knows the 4th of July. Come on. Okay. Let's look at, pull up the Shekinah, the word Shekinah on Wikipedia. I want to show that this idea of the female deity, the Jews have not been immune to the idea of the female deity. They have let that pagan concept into their hearts as well. Wikipedia right here. Click on that. This term does not occur in the Bible, and it was from a rabbinic source. Did you guys read that part? It does not occur in the Bible. It's from a rabbinic source. Does not occur in the Bible. It's from a rabbinic literature. Okay, let's look at what this Shekinah glory is. No. Go back. Click. Okay. English transliteration of the word meaning dwelling or settling denotes the divine presence of God. Let's keep going. I want to see where they talk about the Sabbath bride. It's a female, the Shekinah represents the feminine attributes of the presence of God. The feminine attributes of the presence of God. God was never showing up as a female. God always shows up as a male. But Lucifer, he plays it both ways. He's got all the letters covered. So showing up in the form of a female is something that happens to his religion. And we had to find a way to shove it back into Orthodox Judaism. And what do? We use the Sabbath to do it. See if you can get to the point of where it says they actually prayed to the Sabbath as a woman. Jewish prayers. Here we go. Sabbath bride. The theme of the Shekinah as the Sabbath bride recurs in the Kabbalistic yada, yada, yada. Let us invite the Shekinah with a newly laid table and with a well-lit menorah that casts light on all heads. She is crowned through 6 lobes on each side through double side. I don't even know what that means. We have a female presence of the deity. And we are inviting her into our home every 7 days. Every Saturday, we are inviting this being into our homes. Now, did God ever say anything about a Sabbath being the day that you're supposed to invite a female deity into your house? No. This was totally added. Well, why was it added? Could it be that we're trying to pay homage to these pagan deities? And since we have not learned God's ways, and held them, like Jeremiah said, do not learn the ways of the heathen. Do not learn the ways of the heathen. Well, what we've done is we've learned the ways of the heathen. And we've slowly forgotten all about this stuff. As a matter of fact, even on Passover, for example, Passover is unleavened bread and first fruits. These holidays, if you go to Israel, they're kind of merged into one. Most people don't even know what these two are. I'm talking about most Orthodox Jews. Now, forget about the Christians. The Christians have no idea what any of them are. But our pride and joy, the Jews are the Michael Jordan of keeping the faith alive. They're supposed to be the light shiners on the planet. The best we've been able to do with them is we've taken a biblical image and we've now plunked it into a menorah of 9 stems. 2 holidays which are added by the rabbinic traditions. And I'm postulating to you this evening that they are, Purim is a wannabe Lent carnival, and Hanukkah is nothing but a wannabe Christmas. Same God, same ideology, same everything. So at the end of the day, we're forced with, notice everybody on the planet does one or the other, okay? You could either worship the son of this being, or you could worship the S-U-N, the sun god. You could either worship the creator, or you could worship the creation. You could either love God and his laws, or you could love yourself and do whatever you want with your sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And then after you get pregnant 9 months later, you don't know what to do with the baby, you'd have an abortion, you hand it over to Moloch, and you do it again the next year. At the end of the day, obedience, one of the most forms of worship. It's got many: sacrificing, singing, bowing down, but obedience is one definition of worship. So at the end of the day, if you obey that being, that is the way you worship Satan. If you obey this being, that's the way you worship him. It's one of the ways that you worship your God. Whoever you obey, that's who you're worshiping. So, ask yourself, where on this spectrum do you rest? Do you know more about God's holidays, or do you know more about Satan's holidays? Are you going east? Are you going east? Is your star pointing east, or is your star pointing west? And what I'm asking everybody tonight is, hey, let's start heading west. Let's start throwing away all this stuff, because it was all added. It was all caked on. Either it was caked on in early Israel history or Roman history or pagan history, but all of it, it's all junk. It's all been caked on luggage that we cannot learn what the true meanings of these holidays is until we shed all this dead weight. And that's what I think it is. It's dead weight. My closing remark is the idea that this is strictly a crazy idea. I can't prove it. Don't quote it. But imagine, what's the one thing that Satan has that God does not have? A what? A birthday. Isn't that interesting? The most important day in the Satanic Bible to any Satanist is your own birthday. Wouldn't it follow that the most important day for Lucifer would be his birthday? Why? It's the one thing he's got that God doesn't have. A being that is eternal, always is, was, and is to come, just does not have a birthday. But Lucifer has a birthday. It's a distinguishing mark that he has. For example, the Creator is a distinguishing mark that only he has. He's the only creation. What Satan can do is he can take pieces from the puzzle that God creates, but he can't create anything out of nothing. So Creator is a title that strictly belongs to this. But a birthday is a party that Satan can celebrate. And let's say that you were a satanically minded guy and that you had all power and authority temporarily over this world. What day would be the most popular? What day would you want the whole world to celebrate? Your birthday. Could it be? Now, wouldn't it be funny if it was, that Satan's birthday was actually 12 o'clock, December 31st, right at midnight? When the whole world is celebrating either New Year's, Christmas, Epiphany, could it be that his birthday is actually That's when he was created, and that's why that date is so important to him. Because why did he pick that day? God picked this day because this is the first coming of the Messiah. This is when the lamb showed up. He picked this is because this is when the lion's going to show up. He picked these times because this is when he was riding a donkey. This is when he was working at McDowell's. And this is when he's going to get married and have full authority and glory with the trumpets and the. So these days have a lot of importance to a king that is getting ready to take a throne. But could it be that this is all randomly just a stupid day that we've picked out of nowhere? I think that there's actually more significance to it. That is actually the day that Lucifer got created, and he's got the whole system, including every day of the week, lined up to honor him and to worship him and to pay him honor and worship, because fundamentally that's what he wanted. He wanted the worship that only belongs to this being. He wanted to take it. What else? He said, well, what about this 5 1/4 day nonsense? Why is it that New Year's Eve is shouldered by these two holidays that are 5 1/4 days apart? This is an absolute fact that in this millennium, all days are talked about in terms of 30-day months, 12 months a year. So the month is exactly 30 days, and the year is exactly 12 months. That means that the moon and the sun are in perfect synchronicity. Today, the moon and the sun are all whacked. The moon goes around 29 point something days. The sun, 365 1/4. The whole thing is out of whack. But if you read about the time frames that are described before Noah's flood, it talks about 5 months as being exactly 150 days. We had 30-day months. We had 360-day years. All ancient pagan calendars. I'm talking about Mayan, Aztecs, Sumerian, Chinese, Indian. They're all based on 360-day years. Our circle is cut into 360 pieces. After about here, the calendar starts getting whacked. And my idea is that the solar system got tweaked. Maybe it was when Joshua asked for that long day. Maybe it's the stars and wonders that we read about in the scriptures, that the skies are actually going to change. But the interesting thing about this calendar is that it was perfectly synchronized with the moon and the sun. Today we live with a 365-day year and, 29 point something month. 365 1/4. And the funny thing is that in this millennium, in the book of Revelations, which talks about this millennium, it talks about 42 months, it talks about 1,260 days, it talks about 3.5 years. Do the math, guess what? This is a 360-day year. It is a 30-day month. Part of the restoration that this king, the true king, is going to give us is he is going to restore our orbit to the proper, synchronized, perfectly balanced, where the sun goes around the earth in 360 days, and the moon goes around, did I say that right? In 360 days, and the moon has a nice little 30-day pattern, and they line up perfectly. So now the Hebrew calendar, the pagan calendar, and the Muslim calendar will all become the same calendar. Today they're all different because one is tracing the moon, one is tracing the sun, and the Hebrew calendar tries to trace both. But the scriptures talk about, in the book of Revelation, check my math, it talks about the year being 360 days and talks about the month being 30 days. So we start off with a 30-day perfect month, 12 months, 30 days, 360 days year, and we end up with a 360-day year. Somewhere in the middle, things get messed up, and today it's 365 1/4. By the way, this changes. Like 100 years ago, the last decimal point, like it went from a 7 to a 0. It's actually still changing today. It's not consistent. The whole solar system is a little out of whack. So, we have a perfect year. Joshua prays for a long day. Things get elongated. Things get messed up in the sky. right before the day of the Lord, there's a verse that says if Jesus didn't cut those days short, there would be no life left on earth. So we have an extension, and over here we have a contraction, lengthening, shortening. We used to be good, we got all messed up, we're going to get straightened out. If this is true, imagine you were Lucifer and you were trying to keep your party schedule straight on your phone. Okay? Your birthday is January 1st on a 360-day year. Now that you've added 5.25 days, where are you going to add these days to your party? Are you going to go that way or are you going to go that way? You follow? Well, half the world goes this way and celebrates Christmas on December 25th. And the other half goes the other way and celebrates the Epiphany on January 6th. Basically, he's like, look, let's just party from December 25th all the way to January 6th, and we'll call the whole thing one big happy, it's going to be my birthday party, and it's a 2-week birthday party. The poor guy's just trying to be consistent with trying to give himself a little bit of honor. Strictly speculation, don't go spreading that around. All right, so did we talk about Day of Atonement, Day of the King, Day of the Lord, the two different messiahs that the Jews are waiting for? Messiah ben David, that's the one who's going to establish the kingdom. Messiah ben Joseph, that's the one who gets whipped and beat and pierced. And the sacrificial lamb. Why it's necessary for this loving being who's all-powerful to come in as a humble, stripped-down servant in order to prove his love for us in the most effective way, which is dying on the cross. Not because of his sins, but because of ours. And any questions or comments? Nobody rang the heresy bell? That's what?
Oh, another question. So, when the Jewish king comes back, their Messiah, he said they're going to enact laws worldwide, right?
You're talking about according to Jewish theology or according to the book of Revelation? Well, actually, it's the same answer. The answer to your question is yes. The Jews are saying that we are going to establish a government that's going to eventually encompass the whole world. And our New Testament says exactly the same thing. You're going to be subject to every single one of these laws that the kingdom of Israel was subject to. Remember during the kingdom of Solomon, right here, for 40 years, they enjoyed 40 years of peace right here. And strangers were allowed into this kingdom as long as you obeyed their laws. This was the halftime show of this kingdom. Notice that it's right smack in the middle. All these laws are coming back. Sacrifices are coming back. That temple is going to get rebuilt. You're going to have a high priest, and it's going to be the high priest. You're going to have the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and the political and religious offices are going to be joined once and for all. What we've been hesitant to do, which is merging of church and state, which is why we always separate it, because every time somebody gets to do that, we have nothing but disasters. That is finally going to happen. Well, when is it going to happen? Is that the question? Hitler was 1940. 666 is next. Jesus left in the year 33. If you add 2,000 years to it, it gets to 2033. Think about that. In 14 years, it's going to be Jesus' 2,000th year departure anniversary. So remember when Jesus says, on the third day you'll see me again? This is what I think he meant. Day 1, day 2, day 3.
Not the end of the third day, the beginning of it.
Exactly. And we took that and shoved it into a resurrection, a death on Friday and a resurrection on Sunday, which makes no sense because he had to be in the belly of the whale, like the prophet Jonah, for 3 days and 3 nights. That was the only sign that humanity got. When the Jews pestered him, said, give me a sign. The only sign you're going to get is going to be in the belly of the earth like Jonah, 3 days and 3 days, 3 nights and 3 days. But him coming back on the third day does fit this picture well. So I'm saying that we're 14 years away. You know, the calendar right now is so messed up that it is very easy to swing 10, 20, 30 years one way or the other. You got to start getting into some serious mathematics to figure it out. It's probably possible. For example, this exile number, this 1878-year exile, there's a book in that library that actually shows you the idea that this was a mathematically devised formula. God says, if you do this again, I'm going to punish you 7 times. So if you take the amount of years that they were exiled here, plus the amount of years that they were exiled in Egypt, you multiply that by 7, and that's exactly how long the jail sentence was. All of this stuff is synchronized to the T. If you have those programs that look at the stars, if you look at the way the stars looked like in 3 or 4 BC, 2 planets actually lined up and created this humongous looking star right on top of Bethlehem. So this history is written in the stars. Not everything that's associated with astronomy is evil. Astrology is evil. That's astrology. But a lot of this isn't actually astronomy. So it's predictable. I don't know how to do it. The point of all this is whether you were born in this millennium, this millennium, this millennium, notice that the temptations have always been pretty much the same. You're always tempted to either follow this being or to do what you want, do your own thing, and do whatever you want. You're either part of the rebellion, which is what these things are all about, or you're part of the obedience. And when you love God, you want His kingdom to come. You actually pray for it. Our Father who art in heaven, may your kingdom come. And we want it. We want it here on earth, just like it is in heaven. What you got going up there, we want it down here, and I want to be part of it. That's what we're praying. If you like Him as a king, if you like Him as a governor, because if you like the way things are now, if you've enjoyed the last 6,000 years, this kingdom, you'll be, you know what you'll be like? You'll be like the Palestinians who live in Israel today. They're actually making more money than they used to make before. But they just cannot stand the oppression of being subject to the Israeli government. They just do not want to take instructions from the Israeli government. Even if you pay them more, they don't want it. I'd make it 10 times less, but I want to do my own thing. That's what it is. And there are people in that kingdom that don't belong. In fact, after 1,000 years, it says there's another rebellion at the end. It's not that Jesus' millennium ends in peaches and cream. At the end, after 1,000 years where everything is being ran properly with the right king on the right throne, Satan comes out of jail and says, hey, who wants to come with me? And there's still some humans that go with him. Absolutely incredible. It's like you didn't learn your lesson after 6,000 years. World War I, World War II, that wasn't enough information that we don't know how to run the place. For some reason, we don't learn our lesson. At least some people don't learn the lesson. Some people do. Yeah.
Why do you think the sacrifices will be brought back?
Because people who are born during this millennium are going to sin. There is still sin in this millennium. Sin is oppressed, but it's not eradicated completely. Death and hell are not eradicated until the end of the millennium. There are still funerals over here. As a matter of fact, it gives you an example in Isaiah. We're going to go to a funeral of a 100-year-old man, and we're going to be crying that the guy was so young. Well, that tells you a lot. A 100-year-old dude is young, which tells you the life expectancy is going to go back to the way it was here, 800-900 years. Everything is going back to the first millennium.
Yes, but
so what are you going to do with a sin?
it's a propitiation for the sin, and if that is true, if you need the remediation for sin through sacrifice, then what about all the people for the last 2,000 years? Well, there's no temple, there's no sacrifices going on. How are their sins remediated?
Their sins are remediated by painting that blood of the lamb on your doorpost. You're doing that virtually when you paint that blood on your doorpost. We're doing it in a virtual way. We're relying on our repentance. And why did I repent? Why did I stop my sin and stop my rebellion? Because of the power of that blood. That's what did it. And that's what creates a converted being.
So why won't that just continue throughout that millennium?
My theory, don't quote me on this, is that I think that Jesus' law has to have a chance of being displayed to the world. Like if you would have done it my way, If Israel would have done it my way, and if Abraham and if Noah, if Adam would have just done it my way, we could have had the kingdom over here. This entire 6,000 year postponement has been done because my laws were not implemented. So I think that for 1,000 years, he wants to have a demonstration of exactly what happens if all of his laws were obeyed. For example, we actually know that the Feast of Tabernacles is actually mandated during the millennium. All nations have to go and pay homage to this king in Israel. If you don't, your nation doesn't get any rain. Okay? If you read the Passover, these things are says they will be for you forever. You understand? It's for the entire age. All of these feasts are going to be in full. They're going to be in full operation during the 1,000 year millennium. Well, what about the rest of the book of Leviticus then? All the animal feast, all those dots and tittles and the priest and the uniform. If that stuff's not all coming back, what good did it ever do for anybody? Because nobody ever ran the program properly. You understand? Well, this is a fight. It's a fight over the software. I think Jesus has to run his software for 1,000 years to show that, hey, it would have worked, and you guys just postponed it with your rebellion by refusing me. We just did not refuse him in this year. We refused him over here. We refused him over here. Noah's flood was nothing but an ultimate refusal of God's laws. The whole planet, besides 8 people, had to get flushed.
Isn't the sacrificial lamb pointing to Jesus? And wouldn't it be funny if Jesus was inside the temple while the sacrificial lamb was still getting slayed outside?
It would? I don't think so. It's like, that's what the king went through? Wow, this guy must really love me. This is a big argument, though. I mean,
well, then, like you look at 1 Samuel 2.
yeah, you want to ring the heresy bell, now's the time.
Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. So even back then, the prophets kept saying, obedience is better than sacrifice.
The ultimate goal is to get you to love God and love others. To love God, love his law, and love other people. That's the goal. Okay? And when you see animals getting sacrificed, innocent animals getting sacrificed, it's moving. It touches you. It's effective. I mean, we did it one time. We killed a lamb, and it was traumatic for years. You guys ever want to do something and understand exactly what? Take a lamb and slaughter it the way you're supposed to. Do a kosher slaughter of a lamb and just look at it. And it is extremely touching to your heart. It moves you. So then to look at the king in his full apparel and his full glory, and to say, you subjected yourself to that? That to me is an increase in worship. That to me is awe-inspiring. That to me makes me love him even more, even if I'm born during this millennium. What's the alternative? Let's go the other way. That we take all of this Levitical stuff and discard it totally? I mean, you realize how much of the Old Testament you'd have to throw away if you do not start the temple sacrifices again.
The alternative would do to do certain holidays as a remembrance of what happened in history. It's not necessarily all of that.
So why is it so offensive to you to see a goat being sacrificed just because Jesus is sitting on the throne?
The purpose of the goat was leading to Jesus. They understand what, and Jesus is just sitting inside the temple.
Yeah.
Then what's the purpose of killing another lamb?
Well, if it's so easy to convert towards his ways and his laws just because he's sitting in the temple, then all the human beings that are born during this millennium would all be saved, loving people. But that's not the case. The fact is that there's a rebellion. There is still sin in this regime. sin is not eradicated completely.
What about Hebrews 10:4? For it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins.
Yes, it is impossible for the blood of goats to take away sins. If you don't connect a loving creator to the fact that he's the one who shed his blood for me, that's what creates my thankful heart towards him. That's what creates my love for him. That's what makes me want to get married to him. That's what makes me want to be his bride. The animals, they point you in that direction, okay? They kind of bring you to the betrothal, but they don't finish the job. So you got to finish the job with your husband laying down his life for you.
But if we're going back to the way that it was in the garden, right, with the lions laying down with the lambs. Yeah. Going back to being vegetarian. Yeah. At that time, there weren't any sacrifices.
Really? What about who dressed Abel? Exactly. We are getting back to that stage, but it took us 1,000 years to get out. It's going to take us 1,000 years to get back in. You understand? This is a redemption kingdom. He shows up. He's not going to snap his fingers and all the trash goes away. You understand? This kingdom gets rebuilt by him and us working together to redeem the planet.
Rob, you have a question on that end of the room.
Yes.
Oh, I was just thinking through a few things here. I was just thinking Hebrews 10, it says, but when Christ had offered for all time a single sacrifice for sins, he then sat down at the right hand of God. I was kind of thinking back to where, I think it was the Sermon on the Mount, where he said that he didn't come to abolish the law, but he came to fulfill it himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that because he came and offered propitiation for sin, I guess he's fulfilled the law and there's no need for sacrifices?
Whoa. Fulfilled the law means that we no longer need the law? Is that how we're defining fulfilled?
Well, in Romans I was looking at that we're released from the power of the law, that we're not, as Christians, subjected to the law, that now we're freed from that in Christ because he has fulfilled it.
You are free from the punishment of the law. You are free from your guilty verdict. Due to the fact that you broke the law, you have this verdict on your back. Somebody now paid the price, and you are let out of prison. You are now free. But once you get out of prison, does that mean you can start shooting and raping and pillaging again? So are you out from underneath the law, or do you now follow the law because now you have a new heart and you actually want to? You love God, you love his law, so now not robbing banks, not raping women, not stealing things, it's not a burden for you. It's a joy. It would actually cause you pain to break his law, because you would see that my law breaking caused you to bleed on that cross, and I never want to go through that nonsense again. That's what makes you holy. It's that sacrifice. It's not that you are. Let's look at it the other way. Let's interpret the law of Pete. Help me on this. If we interpret the word fulfill, I didn't come here to abolish the law. I came here to fulfill the law. What does the word fulfill means? That he did away with, right? That's how we hear about it a lot. Well, so Jesus didn't come on earth to abolish the law. He came on earth to do away with it. Does that make any sense? Huh? He came to perfect it, to show you that A, it works, A, you should be obeying it, and this is what happens when you don't. And guess what? For 1,000 years, we're going to see it in its full operation. I'm going to put this operating system in the computer, and I'm going to show you how many times it crashes.
I guess I'm still curious, like with Peter, when he has the vision for, I think it was with some of the ceremonial law, like what could be eaten and what not. How does that kind of fit into this in terms of, where he was told that you did not have to eat, like they were not restricted by the same foods that the Jews historically have been?
Okay, go back and read the vision of Peter. A, is it talking about food or is it talking about people? Let's give the context. Peter is being told, you need to go preach this message to these Gentiles. And Peter's like, Gentiles? Those guys don't take showers. They sprinkle pig's blood everywhere. They use bacon bits like fairy dust. And you want me to go and talk to these people? What are you, nuts? And then he has this vision saying, hey, don't call anything unclean that God has decided to be clean. Now, are we talking about food or are we talking about people? Is God telling them, don't worry about the law. Go ahead and start drinking pig's blood and eat as much cat and dog and hawk as you want? That's not the issue. The issue is you don't have to stay faithful. You don't have to worry about stealing and raping and all that stuff. You can do all of that. What's important now is that you just follow Jesus, whatever that means, because if you remove all the law, exactly what are you following? Now let's look at the other way. Or could it be that what he was telling them is like, hey, I have to get this message, this clean message, I have to get it to a bunch of dirty people. If you keep looking at these dirty people like second-class citizens, that you won't even sit down with them and have a meal with them, how am I going to get this message? Basically, this exile of Israel, the only lemonade that we're going to get out of these lemons is that this message is going to go to the Gentiles. I need Jewish people to preach a Jewish message to a bunch of unclean, uncircumcised Gentiles. I cannot have you getting hung up over what we're having over a cheeseburger. You understand? Those laws, they're not suspended. Eating pork is just as stupid as it is today as it was back then. Talk to any doctor. Working 7 days a week is just as stupid today as it was back then. Go to China and see how many cultures that work 7 days a week. See what their creativity looks like. So all these laws are in full effect even today, just like the law of gravity hasn't changed. What he's done is he had to tell Peter, you need to understand that the destruction of Israel has to be used for good right now. And I need this to go to I need you to preach a Jewish message to the Gentiles. I cannot have you being all snobby and all standoffish. You understand? Which is still going on today, by the way. That's why Jews don't proselytize. To them, it's, hey, this is our thing, we're good, nobody in, nobody out. That was one of the conflicts. This message is now saying, no, we want to invite everybody to this kingdom. The New Testament is an invitation, not to conversion, not to a new law system, not to a new operating system. The New Testament is an invitation to the kingdom, to the operating system that has been written since before the earth was even created. And mankind has refused to put it in operation. When Jesus comes back, he's going to put it in operation, and he's just inviting people in freely. However, you got to want it. You understand what I mean? You got to want it. You cannot be. You're not going to be allowed into this kingdom. He's not going to resurrect you, give you a new body, put you as a leader, as a king, and as a ruler of this kingdom underneath his regime. If you don't agree with him, if you don't agree with his laws, where is he going to put you in this kingdom? If you're still a rebel, if you're still in a rebellious state, you understand? The church, the Gentile church, is going to be used as an extension of the kingdom of Israel because it loves the law of Israel. If your heart is dead set against the law of Israel, then you're not part of the commonwealth. He's not your king. Well, if he's not your king, why would he bring you into this kingdom? Why not just judge you like all the other rebels and throw you in hell and erase you? The resurrection of the saints that happens on the rapture, on the day of trumpets, these saintly people that get brought in with new heavenly bodies, these are people that love God, they love his laws, and they're actually going to help him establish this, like a computer network. You got the one computer that's going to be working properly, and now you need a network in Mexico, so you need a Mexican saint. And you need one in China, so you need a Chinese saint and an American saint. So that's why the church is an international body of all languages, because you have been given the tools. You've been equipped with taking this operating system and applying it to your thing. And to the degree that you love it, that's how much authority you're going to get. When it says some people are going to get a city, some people are going to get a state, depending on, are you going to be the president of the nation? Are you going to be the governor of California? Are you going to be the mayor of San Diego? I mean, if you can't even manage your own house, if you can't even manage your own body, if you can't walk by a bank without stealing the money, you understand? We can't give you any authority. Imagine a police officer who just can't control, he walks by, pooh, he's got to shoot somebody. We immediately take his gun away and we strip him of his authority. So this kingdom is a king granting authority, sharing authority with his bride. Just like you, when you get married, you share your authority with your wife to build a new house together. But you got to be in harmony. If she's constantly wanting to go the other way, the house is not going to get built. This kingdom has got an Israeli government system and people wanting to be part of the Commonwealth of Israel. And that's what it says. Guys, if the rejection of the gospel was a blessing for you, imagine how cool it's going to be when the Jews say yes. You understand? If the rejection of these Jews, when the Jews said no to Yeshua, it led to this exile, which for us was the best thing that happened since apple pie. We got invited to a party that we had no business going to. But this exile, this lemon, this pile of lemons gets turned into lemonade for the Gentiles. But it says, if their exile was a blessing for you, imagine when they turn. Imagine when they start being the light of the world and all the cylinders start firing properly. The Jew does his job. The Gentiles do their job. That's when the kingdom is going to take over the whole earth. But do you see how important it is for this operating system, for this law to actually get implemented in reality, in physicality? It's not we're leaving, we're going to heaven, we're going to be stringing a harp on a cloud all day long. That's not what the kingdom of heaven is. We're literally praying for it every day. May your kingdom come here on earth. And we're going to use the same law as we use in heaven. Ooh, with a God who happens to care enough about me to walk away from his full majesty and you know, when we described him, where he's a king, but he's also a servant. He's a God, but he's also a man. This is the guy that we're going to be giving full authority, full religious authority, full political authority. We're literally going to make him God on earth. Why? Because he's got authority, but he loves me. He's a man, but he's also got divinity. This is a unique creature that deserves all authority, the name above all names, the king above all kings, and this is the guy who knows how to run the planet because he's the one who built it. You know, when all else fails, follow the instructions.
So then, how do we know where to draw the line? Because obviously you can't just go back to following Levitical law 100%. Because
well, today you can't follow the Levitical law even if you wanted to. There is no temple. What are you going to bring a lamb to Jerusalem? You bring a bloody lamb to Jerusalem, you're going to find yourself in jail in about 30 seconds. So, but you can love God and love others. This you can do. Okay? And remember, all of these laws are aimed at getting you to do what? Yeah. And the minute you think that the law replaces this, guess what he did? He literally said, you know what, forget about the law. I don't want any more of your sacrifices. I don't want to hear, even your Sabbaths are making me sick. You understand? Because they replaced obedience to the law with a relationship to their father. That's not what a loving father wants. He wants a relationship. And he's very graceful and he's very merciful when you make a mistake. But you can't be willfully set dead against the governor of the universe. If you just don't agree with his ways, you can sit there and say, hey, why are we doing it this way? But the minute you become a rebel, like, no, you are dead wrong, you have now joined the satanic rebellion.
Okay, but where's the line between, like, okay, I understand that Christmas is not...
It's called willful sins and...
Sins committed unknowingly.
The literal term in the Bible is sins committed unknowingly. Once you shift your direction away from Satan and towards God, you have a loving heart, you have a loving spirit. You really can't sin at that point. If you do, it's actually a mistake. It's a miscalculation of, it's like when I stepped on your foot, I'm sorry, I wasn't there. It wasn't my intention to do that. Because your intention at this point is to be a loving individual. You've abandoned your selfishness. You've abandoned your love of self, and you've replaced it with love of God and love of others. So there's literally two sins that are talked about. The sins willfully committed, which is what Satan does. He knows exactly what God wants, and he knows exactly what God doesn't want. And he's fighting him the entire step. And he's trying to pull us. Notice he's trying to destroy this picture and replace it with his. He's willfully doing it. And for him, there is no sacrifice left. If the law didn't do it, and if Jesus did sacrifice, Jesus worked with him for 40 days. Notice, he was very polite with Lucifer for the 40 days that he was walking in the desert. Notice how polite Jesus was with Satan? And by the way, I think that was Barabbas. You ever think about who did he walk around with the 40 days? I think we had two Jesuses, Jesus Barabbas and Jesus, the real Jesus. I think literally that's who Satan had possessed in physical form. But notice how polite Jesus was with him. He was authoritative, but he was gentle, he was polite. He was responding to him like Satan was firing off with a perverted use of God's word. And Jesus fought back with, no, that's not really what it means. This is the proper interpretation of the verse. Like he's almost trying to teach him. That's weird. Right? Versus, dude, I haven't eaten for 40 days. The last thing I need is you to break my chops. I got to get through this fast. Buzz off. He didn't have that attitude. Look at the demons that asked him to get into the pigs. He was nice with them too. Hey, we know who you are. We're the Holy Son of God, but can you not send us back to hell? Can you please send us into the pigs? You know, he had the same attitude that he had when Mary asked him to turn the water into wine. It's not my time yet, but let's err on the side of being nice. Yes. It's almost like there was a court session. And of course, there was more video cameras on that one event. You know what I mean? You ever seen the El Chapo the trial? All the video cameras, or the O.J. Simpson with all the video cameras? Could you imagine how many universal video cameras were on the scene at the time when these two Yeshuas were walking around the desert for 40 days? Everybody was looking. Everything was being recorded. This was the ultimate showdown of Simba and Scar.
Okay, but today, we have to, obviously we can't follow the Levitical law perfectly. So where do you draw the line between like obeying God's law that's written in the Bible and being like, you know what, we're here to try and, part of the reason why we're here is to try and get other people.
Yes, our job is to go out and pass out flyers. That's all you're doing. For 2,000 years, what God said is, hey, I'm having a party. The Jews rejected it. Eventually, they're going to say yes. But for now, there's a rejection. So tell you what, here's a bunch of flyers, and I need you to go pass them out.
So it's kind of hard to do that if you don't...
But the party hasn't started. You understand? It's an invitation to a future party.
Okay, but my point is, you're trying to preach to people who are celebrating that Christmas is, like, that is their favorite holiday of the year, and I don't even do Christmas. And so
but why is it your favorite holiday throughout the year? Is it because, is there something fundamentally wrong with getting an Easter egg and burying it and having a kid discover it? There's nothing wrong with an Easter egg hunt. At the fundamental level, there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, so you have freedom to operate it. But the minute you start to say that this is something that it's not, like this is God's birthday, now you've opened yourself up to satanic deception. For example, let's say that you are the Antichrist who needs to put himself in power. You're 666. This is the last man that Satan is going to possess, and he has to put him on the throne of the world for 7 years. But nonetheless, he's got to incarnate this man. What would be the perfect birthday for that guy to have? If you could pick any day of the month, any day of the year, if you were Satan and this is your Antichrist, what birthday would you give him? I would give him December 25th. And then it says that the guy is going to get a lethal blow and he's going to have a resurrection. Have you noticed the Antichrist has to fake all the job that this guy did? He has to fake it. He gets a deadly blow to the head, and then there's a resurrection. Out of all the days of the month, of all the days in the year, if you were Lucifer and your man is incarnated, and you got to fake a resurrection, what day would you have that resurrection take place? Easter Sunday. You see, it's got nothing to do with Easter eggs and Easter bunnies. It's got to do with confusing two deities to the point where most people can no longer tell them apart. It's got to do with saying that now abortion is actually good. Fornication, homosexuality, gambling, all these cross-dressing, role reversals, socialism. You understand? That's what this fight is all about. All of these laws that are being violated because of selfishness are being sold to us now under the dream of, if you are really loving, you are going to have a tolerance for all of this. Have you ever noticed the pro-abortion argument? It's coming from a position of moral superiority. Think about that. We're now starting to crisscross what is loving and what is selfish. To someone who thinks like this being is unloving.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, you first.
Well, I guess I'm just curious, are we then not supposed to set aside a day to celebrate the resurrection of Christ or his birth?
Were you told to set aside a day to celebrate the resurrection of Christ?
It seems that we're kind of letting fear of what could happen dictate.
No, we're not letting fear in. Were we told to celebrate the resurrection?
Well, we were not explicitly, but I don't see why we should not. Like, this is the greatest event in history. Why should we not?
Were we told to celebrate these holidays?
I don't believe that we were. I mean, Israel was, but that gets back to our discussion earlier.
Okay.
I think, I don't know that we'll settle that at this time, but...
So the ones that you were told, you don't do. The ones that you weren't told, which happen to coincide and match perfectly with the satanic ones, those you want to do. You don't see anything wrong with that?
I see. I think the church, I don't know, I see through history here and now today, I think there are a lot of people that are sincerely celebrating the birth of Christ and sincerely celebrating the resurrection of Christ, and they're not, in their mind, they're not tying it to satanic worship. They're purely out of love for Christ doing these things.
The 3,000 Jews that got swallowed up with Korah's rebellion under the golden calf incident, were they thinking that they were celebrating, were they sincerely celebrating the God that took them out of Egypt? They weren't? Go back and read it again. That's literally what they said. They took off their golden earrings. They thought they were making a sacrifice as a thank you to the God that took them out of Egypt. And we are going to give them this cow, and this is going to make them. They were very, very sincere. Yeah. But they thought that it was who? Did they think that it was Satan, or did they think that it was Jehovah?
Well, I would say at heart they knew it was not God. I mean, they suppressed the truth.
They were worshiping in the way that they were taught how to worship, not how God told them to worship.
Yes.
Okay.
They were relying on tradition.
It is true that you're judged based on the light that you have, okay? In fact, you have examples of Jews who fall into that category exactly. As when Moses came back down from the mountain, there were some Jews who were like, oh my God, I didn't understand. I was doing it. I thought I was listening to you. And Moses was like, no, you weren't listening to me. As a matter of fact, you were getting you were getting me angry, and God's about to wipe you guys off the map. And he draws the line, and then those people immediately repented, stopped that nonsense, and went over to his side. Certain people, on the other hand, insisted and says, no, this is the God that took us out of the land of Egypt, and you don't know him, and you are misrepresenting him. And they stayed on this side of the fence. So now there's three categories of people. The ones who were deceived and eventually came back over when the light was shined. And there was the people that after you shine the light, after you show them how these things are completely tied to pagan and to satanic ideas, that even after you show them all that light, they still say, you know what? I don't care about any of that. I just love it. I just like it. You tell them, but Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. I don't care. See, they're not interested in truth. They're not interested in obedience. They're interested in doing what feels good. You're loving yourself. And you'll come up with a million reasons of why to justify what you're doing. Okay? You want to shack up with your with someone that you're not supposed to shack up with, your brain will tell you, well, God wants me to be happy. She makes me happy. I'm going to go with her because this is in essence what God wants. The human brain has an amazing ability to take sin and make it look like a holy day.
It still seems to me, though, that like there are some things that God has expressly prohibited, and then there are a number of things that He hasn't spoken to. And so, if it seems that we're kind of limiting here in that anything that God has not expressly said that you should do this, it seems like you can conflate this to then say, okay, God has not told me to vote in this election or vote for this person, therefore,
or to drink
to
Coca-Cola.
participate. Yeah, and I understand that you've got some historical roots. That seems to be maybe the strongest argument is that there's historical roots to pagan holidays, but
not just historical roots, current ideologies that are in you've been marinated in socialism and in gambling and in cross-dressing and in role reversal. These ideas are alive and well in the church. It's not that you've said, let's just do the Easter egg hunt, but leave the fornication and the sex nonsense aside. That's not what we did. We have churches now with homosexuality as the pastor. You understand?
Obviously that's a problem, but but much of the church, we celebrate these things without participating in the sin. We participate in. There are many churches that celebrate Christmas. As the birth of Christ, and they do not celebrate the sins of the culture that go along with that. So that.
You know the verse that says that in the end days, this 666 is going to be so close to this 777 that if God did not shine the light, even the very elect would be deceived. What does that tell you? The counterfeit dollar bill compared to the real dollar bill. What does that tell you about those two? They're very, very close.
It also tells me that God's grace
is going to cover it.
to those who are elect.
Yes.
That God's grace will be sufficient.
Yes. Now you want to take advantage of that? For example, if you were back in the golden calf incident and Korah standing over here and Moses standing over there, do you want to stand with Korah and say, don't worry, God's grace will cover us?
No, certainly, because that's expressly prohibited.
Yeah. Worshiping all of this nonsense is expressly prohibited. It brings God to wrath. And the reason why, it's the merger. It's you taking that fake dollar bill and putting it next to the real dollar bill and confusing humanity to the point where God can't separate him. He's always trying to get himself away from Lucifer. And Lucifer's always trying to be like him. You understand? You cannot separate, you cannot distinguish between good and evil if the two start looking the same. So God is always a separator. He's a distinguishing, drawing lines. This is good, this is bad. This guy is a homogenator. He pasteurizes and homogenizes. He mixes everything up to the point where you can no longer tell. So the error of what we're doing when we do that, even though you have a clean heart, you are fueling the homogenization process. You understand? Look at it another way. You have a bank robber who dresses up like a cop, and he starts robbing banks. Well, what's everybody going to do? They're going to start hating cops. So what is the loving sheriff going to do? He has to change the uniform of all his police officers. He has to get away from the evil. You understand? As soon as he gets away, he changes his uniform from blue to green. What is the bad guy going to do the very next day? Do you see how the bad guy always tries to mimic and to counterfeit, and you're always trying to isolate yourself? If you're making real iPhones and the Chinese people are knocking it off, you want to make sure that your box is different than the knockoff. You're always trying to distinguish yourself. By taking part in, like for example, the Jews who add Purim or Hanukkah to the soup, they've inadvertently added an element of merger that clouds, that puts, it's like you're putting smoke in the air, and now you're wondering why you can't see things. You understand? Keep God God, keep Satan Satan. That's why I like the Satanic Bible. It makes it nice and clear. It's when you start merging things, it's like, wait, is this good or evil? That is actually an evil process. Don't do that. Now, I understand that it happens. If it's unwillful, up until God opens up your eyes and say, hey, you got to stop this. For example, like what Jeremiah was trying to do to Israel, a lot of these Jews were worshiping Baal inadvertently. And Jeremiah had a lot of converts that said, you know what, we are going to stop this, we're going to abandon this, and we're going to go back to the way things were. He did convert people. As a matter of fact, a couple of 100 years later, they made him a prophet. So eventually, the nation accepted his message. But back then, only a minority did. So, do you have grace? Yes, you have grace. Is the grace unlimited? After you've been told, and after you've been warned, and after you have all the data and evidence you need, if you're still standing with Korah, is the grace going to cover you? No. There comes a point where it says, now it's decision time. You need to leave the rebellion, and you need to join the kingdom. You know, like when you ask for citizenship, you want to join because you want to live in that kingdom, because you agree with the way that kingdom is going to be ran. You gotta submit your will to God's will. That's what the whole thing is about. It's like, you know, that's why the wife is built to be submissive to the husband, because humanity is the wife. In this relationship, God is the husband, humanity is the wife. We have to be submissive. When push comes to shove, we are co-heirs. We're co-pilot, co-pilot. But when push comes to shove, if one guy's got to make the decision, it's got to be God. Mankind has to submit, even if you don't understand why, how, or where. Sometimes you just have to go with blind trust, just like you expect from your 2-year-old. When I'm pulling his arm because the bus is going to hit him, he doesn't understand why his arm just got pulled out of his socket. It's like, the reason why I pulled your arm out of your socket because there was a bus that was about to turn you into a pancake. So we can fix your arm. I can't fix you, being splattered all over the ground. See, he doesn't understand what you understand. So it would have been better if he would have just came along willfully. We wouldn't have had to pull his arm out of his socket. You understand? So that submission that mankind has to have, it's what was God looking for when he was walking with Adam. He was giving him all kinds of authority. He gave him his credit card. He gave him his car. He gave him access to the whole thing. But he did want to maintain final husbandry over the planet. And that's what Satan bamboozled Adam into giving up. It's like, it's not worth it. That guy just wants to dominate you, tell you what you do. He wants to rule over you. Join the rebellion, and then we're going to be free. Then we're going to do what we want. We're going to really see things. Yeah, we got to see things. We saw things like women getting raped and children getting cancer and wars and death and plumbing and suffering and all kinds of misery. A lot of stuff that God was trying to keep us in the dark, just like you keep your son in the dark. You don't want him to know what it's like to be stoned on heroin or cocaine or whatever. We literally say, this is not worth knowing. Stay away from this. That's what loving parents do. Selfish people, on the other hand, say, no, I want it all. I want it all, and I want it now. Two different ways of living. One is a position of submission and trust and obedience. You want to keep defining worship? Submission, trust. These are all acts of worship. That's what God is looking for. And the idea that we are out of the law, that the law has been fulfilled, therefore we're no longer under the law is gone, don't need to think about it. Think how stupid that is. Do you really want to go out there and eat a cat? Why don't you eat cat or dogs or raw monkey brains like they do in China and Africa? You see, the fact of the matter is we actually do keep a kosher diet. Besides lobster and pork, everything else about our diet is actually exactly the way God told us to do. Now, wouldn't it be funny if we would have actually obeyed the shrimp and the pork thing if a lot of our diseases would have gone away. Wouldn't that be funny? Like the Seventh-day Adventists who live like 5 or 6 years longer than the average evangelical. Could it be that that's because they're following the law that we all should be following? How many times have you read this guy who got sick because he ate pork, he ate raw shellfish? We literally have a sign at our sushi restaurant. If you eat oysters and shellfish, be careful. If you're pregnant, stay away from this stuff because it could kill you. You understand? That's just the law of Leviticus that you've reprinted in a different format. In the bathroom of the restaurant, you have a sign at the In-N-Out Burger. Employees must wash their hands before you go back to work. Do you know where they got that sign? That's the book of Leviticus. You're not under the law? Really? The health department doesn't think so. Of course you're under the law. Now go to India where there is no such sign. There is no such law. They poop in the river over here, and downriver they drink it. And their kids die at 3 years old from diphtheria and dehydration. You see what happens when you don't follow the law? The law's not a bad thing. The law's a good thing. We give our kids laws to help them, not to hurt them. It's to live life more fully, not to shrink us down. Those lines in the middle of the road, you know, the yellow line in the middle of the road, I like everybody that goes north using the right side and everybody that goes south using the left side. That's what avoids head-on collisions, which is a beautiful thing. You see, laws are good if you got the right law, if you got the right lawgiver, if you got the right king. You give me a guy like Hitler. By the way, Hitler was trying to start this kingdom. You noticed? Hitler was trying to start his 1,000-year reign. That's what he was, his 1,000-year Reich. He was trying to start this kingdom. So was Napoleon. So was Charlemagne. So was lots of other guys. They all tried to take a crack at this. They all failed. Why? What's the difference? They don't know how to do it. Lucifer has not been built. He has not been given the means to govern this planet. So as much as he tries, and he's been trying, he's been putting in a good effort. You got to give him an A for effort. He just can't get it together. It's like a gang member. It's like El Chapo and those guys. The bigger their gang, eventually it all implodes. Why? Because there's no love in the system. Everybody is totally selfish. So when Satan gets to the top of the food pile, there's demon number 2, and what goes through his mind? I want to be number 1. So your entire team is constantly trying to step on the face of the guy beneath you. The whole system, it's like a bunch of zombies. Remember the movie with Brad Pitt where all those zombies were climbing on top of each other? That's what Satan's kingdom looks like. It is inherently unstable. It is divided against itself. It can never stand. Kingdoms based on love and trust and submission and obedience to a loving creator, those kingdoms can stand. These cannot. Jesus was saying, by the power of Beelzebub. Beelzebub is another name for Baal. That's who's giving you the power to heal people. And he's like, I'm being energized by Beelzebub? Wow, if that's not the pot calling the kettle black. So it's like, if this kingdom is divided against itself, then why? Don't you see that it would have already have collapsed? I don't belong to this kingdom. I'm trying to introduce you a whole new kingdom. I'm the thief coming to try to steal this thing back from Satan. They were confusing Beelzebub with Jehovah. And that's when he says, you guys are getting dangerously close to the blaspheming of the Holy Spirit. When you confuse this guy with this guy, and then after I actually shine the light, you're still insisting that he's right, there's nothing left for you. There's no sacrifice, there's no blood, there's nothing left to be done. You're a rebel through and through. The cement is hard, doesn't want to get reshaped. There's nothing else you could do with it. You got to jackhammer it and haul it to the dump. What are you laughing at? To what? The 2-month-old? Oh, God, man, king, servant. By the way, these are the 4 Gospels. We talked about this last time. Matthew, king of the Jews. Mark, servant, washing feet. Luke, he's a son of man. That's why his genealogy goes all the way to Adam. His humanity is shown in the book of Luke. And the book of John is his divinity. He's a God who's a man. He's a king who's a servant. That's the guy who you want to run this place. Satan is a king. He's a God, little g. He's a man. He has his guys. He possesses men all the time in history. Notice that this is the one thing he doesn't have. This is the separation. And this is what makes his kingdom unstable, unworthy, and non-viable.